right, everybody, welcome to Game Audio 1, Lecture 2. Today I'll be talking about audio in game development, the various roles in game audio, what kind of tools we use, software and hardware, and I'll briefly go over the intro to soundscapes and game genre types because I already kind of went over that with you in Wednesday's lab. So let's get started. This is the first slide I ever made many years ago. It's kind of funny because it looks so bad in comparison to the other ones, but I kept it because it works. It's the components of a game company in no particular order. There's no real hierarchy here. I just have programming, art, audio, design, production, writing, QA and or testing, your IT infrastructure, and any web marketing. That could include, social media marketing and PR and all that. But at the top, you see biz and legal. That is there because it's very important. A colleague of mine once said, "You're only one game away from failure at any time," and that's true. Every time any moment you're working on a game, whether it's your own company or it's a larger group you're working with, you've got to constantly think about business development, the next game that you're going to be working on, and that's kind of like the lifeline you need in order to stay successful and to stay employed doing what you love to do, right? In any event, you'll be inside that you just started your new company or you joined some new group, and you'll see a lot of people possibly working together in a big open area, like a common area. Programmers, artists, producers, everyone's having a great time. There's a lot of chemistry, a lot of camaraderie, and that's what you need in a game company. Everyone's together, but somebody seems to be missing here. So always down the hall in a remote office, a studio, a cave, or even a hobbit hole, lurks the audio designer, right? It's go into that dark recess there and find the sound designer or something, right? And this is just because we're trying to isolate all of the background noise, conversations like the beep you just heard right there. And what you need to do is really focus on your audio and keep all those distractions out. The problem is if you're in one of those open concept offices and you have no side rooms or cave to crawl into, what do? So you usually have to get something like noise canceling headphones just to do your job. But if you want to do serious work, you need to have an isolated room to do that in, or at least a room that has some acoustic material to prevent echoes and just do some minor soundproofing. Okay. We do need to get out more, and that's something that all audio folks need to do, is make sure they can crawl out of that cave and integrate with the rest of the team as much as possible. Okay. And there are so many different roles in audio right now. It's a great time to be involved in music and sound and every discipline within audio. I don't have them all listed here. This is just a general list, and there are certainly more and more every year. There's just new, like spatial audio and VR audio are some new fields that are emerging that are becoming, quite a popular role to be in. But let's just start with the audio director. Okay. They're often at the same level as, say, an art director or programming director. Maybe they call it a CTO or something like that, where you have somebody responsible for everything you hear in the game across multiple games. And then you have your kind of senior level people below that, and then the juniors and assistants and interns, and usual kind of hierarchy there. But the audio director is really accountable for, as I mentioned, not just everything you hear in a game, but across multiple projects. And that could be all of the games that your studio has in production or that are being maintained. It could mean anything for materials like on a website, or for marketing, going to a trade show, having a trailer at the next E3 conference or something. Any sort of sounds for internal development, like tools that may need to be created that require sounds. All right. And this isn't even a complete list. This is just kind of a for example type of situation here with the music, sound, and dialogue categories. So for music, you're responsible for the direction. What is it going to sound like? You're responsible for the person who's going to be composing it. It could be you. It could be somebody that works on the team as a dedicated composer. You have to edit and mix all that material, and we do what's called mastering, which is like the final polish, adjusting all the volumes, the balancing of all the instruments, and the equalization of frequencies, the EQ. Right, we'll talk about all these things down the road. But I just want you to know generally that the audio director is responsible for all audio you hear in a game across multiple projects. Real quick though, sound has many disciplines within sound design. Field recording, which is like environmental ambience, outdoor recording essentially. Foley, which is the art of synchronizing sounds to human events or creature events in our case sometimes. And then we have to edit all that stuff, mix it, and master it. Again, not an exhaustive list, and I wouldn't quiz you on what every single discipline is, and we'll talk more about these in detail. Dialogue is casting, scheduling folks for recording their voices right here, and then editing and mastering that, and localizing, which is a foreign language translation. All the different languages you need to have your game converted into. And that could be kind of a daunting task. But you'll find that if you are ever interested in becoming an audio director, or somebody who is, that depending on how large the company is and how many games they have out, the role may become also largely an administrative job, because you're managing a lot of things rather than simply creating. And so you're usually trying to balance how much time that you're doing creative work versus this kind of administrative work. And that's the same for an art director, or even a programming director, that sort of thing. There'll always be that sort of administrative amount, management and making sure things are getting done correctly. For the rest of the team, I have an audio manager here. Now, the audio manager is not really related to audio director as much. It's more about, and I don't know how this title came about, but it just kind of evolved this way. They're really about selecting music to license to get copyright clearances in a game. So you would be speaking with record labels, independent bands, production music companies, music supervisors, all this kind of stuff, just to get the rights to be able to use a particular piece of music in a game, like Guitar Hero or Rock Band had done, something like that. The audio lead is somebody who is kind of like the audio director, but they're really just responsible, like the point person for a single title, a single project. Okay. An editor, this is an extremely vague term by design, because it could be a whole bunch of things. They could be working on, like we're doing in this class, post-production, which is taking kind of source material that we find, sound effects and so forth, and editing them to create something new. We're working on mixing, polishing everything up for either some music production, sound design, dialogue production. Maybe it's something for a marketing trailer or a cinematic. It could be anything, but you're generally just, I guess you could also call it audio engineer. You're just working on all sorts of things regarding any category of audio in a game. The VO or voiceover director is somebody who's responsible for, just like making the calls, calling up voice talent, scheduling them for sessions, and making sure that the scripts they're going to be reading from are the most accurate and on point, they're the right versions. Well, again, these are all topics that we'll talk about in more detail later on in the course, but I just want you to know the VO director is responsible for anything to do with getting folks into their respective VO booths and recording the sessions, and perhaps even directing or coaching them, maintaining quality and consistency across all the different studios. Some microphones are different from others. Everyone's voice has a different quality, a different timbre, and so you want to try to find ways to balance out all of those volumes and frequencies and things, and make sure it's all mastered properly. The composer is pretty self-evident. They're recording and creating their own music. They may even be mastering it themselves, and they're doing perhaps all their own editing. The sound designer, another kind of large term, vague term here. You could be involved in any discipline. You could simply kind of have some overlap with the audio editor in terms of just you're mixing and editing things. But generally it means that you're creating sound effects. And that may mean the use of off-the-shelf sounds that you find, and you're kind of stacking them up and slicing and dicing them, making something new. It could also mean you're recording your own ambience or environmental sounds. The Foley that I mentioned before about the synchronizing sounds to events. Oftentimes it's human events like footsteps and so forth. Excuse me. The user interface or the UI, where you're going to come up with all kinds of cool button sounds and pop-up sounds for menus and so forth. Any sort of player or character sounds, oftentimes they're part of a complete set for each character has their own unique sound set. Okay, and it's just a wide variety of things that they could do. A really, really hot job right now, if you're in tech and you're in programming, the industry cannot get enough of audio programmers right now. I'm really glad to hear this because for many years, it was just kind of like you'd have a programmer assigned to the game that would work on audio. Whether or not they wanted to be the audio programmer is another story, but now there's exclusively a role called audio programmer, where this person is working directly with the creative folks and musicians and sound designers and so forth, and they're making sure that the implementation of the audio design is correct. So if I want the soundscape to play out in a certain way, how are we going to do that? So we implement it, we build it, we test it, we iterate it, and it's this long process of evolution, kind of sculpting it, if you will, to make it just the right way we want to have the best experience possible. And the audio programmer is really going to help in doing that. Okay. And there'll always be a need for assistants, junior level folks, and interns. All right. Hopefully paid interns. I always hear about interns, working for free and having to go way beyond what they're supposed to do. But I'm hoping that changes soon, because I know the students really want to get involved in games as soon as possible. Very, very eager, of course. But I never want to see a student or hear about a student getting taken advantage of. So always see if you can get paid for the gig first. Okay. Anyway, you'll be helping with updating, maybe sound asset lists. If you're doing some administrative work, you might be coordinating audio schedules and various tasks and helping out. But you're hopefully also learning about the day-to-day operations of a game company and how audio design factors into that day-to-day cycle, their daily cycle. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different roles there. And again, it's not a complete list, but if this were a test, I may say, name 3 roles in game audio, and you could say, audio lead, audio manager, and composer, and that would be the answer. Okay. I will say though, if you're working for a smaller company, like if you're just an indie company, it's your own thing, and it's just you and 2 of your peers, you're going to have to do someone's going to have to do all the tasks for audio. Usually it's one person. And even in a larger company, if you have 30 or 40 people, if there's an audio director, that may mean that suddenly the audio director is the composer, is the VO director, is the sound designer, and so forth. Maybe not necessarily the programmer, but they need to understand some light scripting, perhaps, if they have to do something in Unity, you're working in, maybe do something in C#, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's always a consideration, but usually the audio programmer's got your back for all the heavy lifting, as they say. And any of these things could be contracted out or outsourced, what we call third party sometimes. As game development proliferates and it's just getting it's become a bigger and bigger business, mobile apps are a huge part of that. And I've found that mobile game companies tend to be very, have a very kind of often a lean business model, in the sense that they outsource a lot of people that aren't just part of the, say, business intelligence or data analysts and things like that, and software engineers. So if it's more of the aesthetic, the creative type stuff, they may outsource the art to a certain group of people and outsource the audio to 1 or 2 folks. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just a very efficient way of doing business, and that's something you may come to expect in mobile game development if you want to be in a freelancer or a contractor or something like that.